right, my babies. I think this video should be a bit more about my failure. The reason I say that is because it sounds like I am kind of like preaching in this note. So here we go, let me read it for you. When every point leads to the same location, maybe you can start seeing how you're stuck. And there's context. A friend from the village. I know exactly who he is. I didn't have to go anywhere. Just instantly pop. So here it is. When every point leads to the same location, maybe you should start seeing how you're stuck. Funny because I wrote this because I noticed how he's kind of like collapsing on the same conversation. It doesn't matter where we try to go in the conversation, he always goes back to one point. And it's a very nihilistic approach. Nihilism, for you guys that I'm sure like whoever's interested will probably Google it. But nihilism is the approach to life where nothing is worth it. Nothing makes sense. Why the fuck do we live? Why do we breathe? Why do flowers grow? It's like perfectly like kind of like consistently going through life looking for meaning. And it's not really meaning that's I guess subjective to you. It's just like because like if you the thing I learned from him is if he gets to a point where he sees some fundamental meaning in why something exists, he would completely and super fast jump somewhere else. Jump somewhere else. You're hurting me when you do this. My cat is, for some reason, seeking my attention a bit more aggressively lately. Although I have been giving her a lot more attention. I don't know. I think she's no longer being maternal, and she's kind of like annoyed by her kids. But anyway, so divergent, right? So anytime he gets to a point where it starts making sense, he completely shoots in a different direction. And the reason why I said this video should start in failure, it's because if I were to consider any conversation with him meaningful, then I'm the one failing and actually being able to kind of like, I guess, show him some essence or explore some essence with him or engage with him on something that I find has essence. I don't know, like it's we all have friends that kind of are not necessarily stuck in their way, but the best way I explain it is here basically. Like every point leads to the same location. It's like there's all the music in the world for you to listen to, but you only listen to a couple of songs. And don't get me wrong, they could be awesome songs, man. But is that why we kind of have music? It's just like throughout this, I don't know. The reason I'm calling I'm calling out my failure when it comes to this because like if he was truly a friend of mine or if I actually truly was a friend of his, then is there some effort that I can put in that kind of like allow him to see something different? And I've attempted in many ways. I've attempted to include him in my thoughts and what I think about. I attempted asking him questions directly on the things that he's good at. I attempted engaging with him on the things that he thinks he actually is qualified to do and all that stuff. But nothing. He definitely is stuck. But why do I feel like me not actually succeeding with him means I'm stuck as well? So here, maybe this could dive deeper into how I actually engage with people. 3 years ago, when I first came to Lebanon, I was very much, if there's no point in our conversation, why are we having it? I was super always kind of like, okay, and interested into going somewhere. Very much so. Like, always interested in going somewhere that would lead to some form of result or some form of like, I guess, checkpoint, right? Because like even if the conversation is not done, it doesn't matter. There are things that you can actually reflect on, check on, whatever it is. Loopy conversations, I can't, I don't know if, I don't want to say I can't handle them. I don't want to handle them. And it feels like when you're stuck, these are the conversations that you keep going to. But through talking to people and being completely like rejected, shut down, and even yelled at for no fucking reason sometimes, like because like if you want to ask a question, when it comes to people, sometimes you ask a couple of questions in a row, and they realize they have no idea what they're talking about, and so they redirect it at you. We project. And so I realized that that's kind of like a thing that I do, and I have to kind of like, that's a failure on my part because I actually want to have this conversation with you, or at the very least, if this is going to happen and I'm going to hang out with you, because that's the case with family, that's the case with friends, that's the case with like acquaintances, you still have to have some form of conversation with them. But most of the time, we all kind of like are talk about the same things. Sometimes you can dive deeper into them. Sometimes you're just kind of like mentioning them. Sometimes you're kind of showing off because you've accomplished stuff. I don't know. But we all tend to kind of like be biased to whatever it is that we're talking about. And the key, I think, to evolution or just us as people prospecting our futures differently is basically the ability to talk about different things every single time, simply because you're kind of experiencing new things and exploring new things or looking at things differently that allow you to like discuss them differently. And so I looked at myself and I was like, all right, Tariq, you're failing. So what should you do? All right, my first reaction was shut the fuck up and stop talking to people and only respond when needed and when people talk. And then at that point, I realized that once somebody makes a statement a couple of times, I have to go ask a question again. It's like, you made the statement on what basis? And basically, that would lead to the same thing. Then I got friendlier in how I actually spoke. I used words differently. I changed how my sentences are formed. I'm sure this helped a lot, actually, like me being able to like discuss things out loud, especially because I call myself out. Anytime I say something that's not really like, I want to say like harmonizing with the truth of how I am, whether it's like something that I thought was true or whether it's something that didn't make sense anymore, like that kind of like makes me return to it. But effectively, what happened, I realized that anytime I talk to people, we all have our limits, and some people's limits are kind of like shorter or closer. And the idea behind it is because you want to maintain a certain relationship. What you do is you kind of like you come, you have a conversation, you feel they're a bit on edge, you give them space. And space mentally, physically, and emotionally. Like, you're living your life, man. Don't worry about it. Let's not have this be a hang up. We're friends, we're family, we're cool. It doesn't fucking matter. I say that, but like that's also a process that I'm trying to like get over. Because most of the times I can't look at people the same way if like they disrespected me or they were stubborn enough in a way that kind of like shows like it's some people are stubborn about what they're doing even though they can see it's damaging everyone around them. I don't care if it's damaging you, you get to decide that. But things that damage your surroundings, I feel like you kind of lose respect for people that are completely being that way. Or at the very least you would not want to engage with them. So effectively it's just reading this note right now made me realize it's been over 4 months since I actually like sat with him. Actually, maybe 5 months since I sat with that guy. And I've seen him two, three times, and he always tells me, "Why don't you talk to me when you go up to the mountains?" And my response is always like, "No, uh, why don't you talk to me every once in a while, or go to Beirut to see me? Because anytime I see him, it's in his house, or else he doesn't hang out." And so I stopped even calling. And it's interesting because like now I'm actually interested to see when if I hang out with him, how would it look like? Because then I could actually measure my own progress, or at the very least see if he actually found something to kind of like get him out of his loop. It's funny how these things kind of like come to you weirdly, because genuinely, When I wrote this, when every point leads to the same direction, it was inspired by him and how he approaches, how his approach is, which kind of like didn't seem to be working for me. But this note is specifically for me, so that I realize anytime I'm going back to the same location, even though maybe mine is a bigger loop or mine is a different colored like path, there's always these things that you kind of go back to. And you have to allow that, you have to set them free, I guess. You have to allow them to be where they are and for you to kind of like, I don't want to say replace, but at the very least engage with things beyond them so that your return to them should be more intentional instead of just this is how I can't go anywhere anymore, so I'm just going to go back to what I know. I'm thinking about the things that I go back to every single day. Maybe that's food for thought, right? Like right now, I'm going to probably process what are the things that I'm kind of like hinging on. It's a video. Love you guys.